Hi, welcome to the only room in the apartment that isn't taken over by DIY projects. Wait, short sleeve shirts, DIY projects, could it be? Yes, it's summer. So what's up this summer? We went to my girlfriend's family cottage and spent 8 days with 9 of our relatives. This was fun. But I brought a camera, I brought some gear, and I did some creative work to keep myself sharp and to keep myself from going insane. This is my summer as a portrait photographer. I hope you enjoy. So let's start with the gear. What's in my bag? I brought my Nikon Z7 with a 20mm, 50mm and 85mm, all f1.8. I brought a flash and two triggers. And then if I'm going to do off-camera flash, I'm bringing gels, always. Um, Regarding the grip, I brought a tripod, a light stand, an umbrella because it's the easiest light refer to transport, and a flash bracket. Get all that stuff in the car, and 2.5 hours later, here we were. A small island off the southern coast of Norway called Hvaler. It is very rocky, almost desolate, very exposed to the wind, and this is the beautiful cottage where me and 9 other people and 2 dogs spent 8 delightful days in July. Oftentimes, when you get to a location, the first photographic opportunity could be before you even walk in the door. Here, you have a very contrasty spot where the sky and the sunlight is illuminating the outside of the house, but there's not much light inside. If I make somebody stand in that doorway, I can use that contrast to create a compelling portrait. First, I made Louis stand on the right side of the doorway and is illuminated by the sky against a darker background inside the house. And then I moved him to the left side of the doorway, and now he's illuminated by the sunlight reflected off the yellow door, and that's why his skin glows so much more. And now it's time for a pop quiz. What in the inside of this cottage makes the best portrait opportunity? You got it? Of course you do. It's those huge windows. Now these portraits are from last year. This year I did not bother to take any new ones because I knew I already had those. The rest of the time I took a lot of candids, of course, but with so many people and animals sharing such a little living space, it was hard to do any serious work. But as is often the case, that constraint became a trigger for creativity and gave us the loose theme that we would follow for the rest of the time in Valer. We invented this character of a young adult daughter who is just looking for some alone time, some peace and quiet in the middle of a very hectic and very populated holiday. So when working on a conceptual portrait, I like to start very simple with very basic images and then build up on the complexity of the storytelling. So the first 2 nights, all we did was walk around the house at sunset and pick up empty spots and just show our character having alone moments and being lost in thoughts. Then from the third day on, we started to complexify and we decided to take our character on the roof. The first thing I tried up there was an 85mm portrait, but I wasn't entirely satisfied. This is great to show the emotion on the face, but the 20mm shot here just tells the story better. The challenge composing this shot was to keep her head above the horizon, but hide the chimney below the horizon so it wouldn't stick out. This was a more important consideration in composing this image than, for example, putting the horizon on a third line. Goes to show that you compose for your story and for your content, not following abstract rules. At this point, I felt like we had a very solid, serious image to illustrate our theme, so the next day we spent our time on creating a more humoristic illustration. So this time I had the character lay on this giant inflatable toy on that little cliff overlooking the sea. I'm really happy how the picture turned out with the bathrobe and the book and the lens flare. There was a bunch of safety information and drawings on the side of the toy, and rather than remove it in post, I decided to have a 3-layer sweater over it. Whenever possible, I like to fix things like this in camera rather than use Photoshop. On our way back from the shoot, I noticed that the sun was at a very low angle and that this big slab of granite was in the shade. I used that configuration to take a very heroic looking portrait of Astrid where 99% of her body is in the light, but she's standing in a very shady area. Again, here the main thing I'm composing for is to have her head over the horizon. That was more important to me than putting the horizon away from the center of the frame. Another place at the house that offered nice photographic opportunity was the back deck. In the daytime, the contrast between the shade of the house and the rest of the landscape was too strong. But come blue hour, and suddenly the contrast is much more manageable. And I have this warm light coming out from the kitchen that can also play a role. I couldn't really wait for 11 or midnight for the light to come to a level where the kitchen light would contribute to the exposure, so I decided to put on my flash with a yellow gel. So I could have that same effect, but a couple of hours earlier, and I wouldn't miss my bedtime. I already had a bunch of pictures of Astrid at this point of the holiday, so I decided to grab one of the dogs and have him or her be my main subject, with Astrid just chilling in the back with a glass of wine. Up to that point, I had been only using natural lights, but once you break out the strobes on a project, it becomes much more natural to use them for every picture going further. So we took our gear to the woods and we were trying to do a surreal girl in the woods picture. What's worth noticing here is that I'm using a red gel on the flash to contrast with all the green foliage, and that I'm feathering my light way up. It's still gonna hit her, no question, but I'm reducing the exposure that the grass and the ground is gonna receive. The final picture looks something like that. Whenever you're underexposing the ambient light, you want to be using a light meter, really, because on your camera screen, or even if you're using the histogram, it's hard or impossible to know what's really on the file. Is the ambient underexposed by one spot, by two, by three? At least when you're using a light meter, you know exactly where the ratio is between your flash and the ambient. At some point it rained, and the children had heard that us French people eat snails, so they surprised me with a bucket full of those. I did not eat them, but what I did is use them for a conceptual portrait. I cleared that terrace of all the chairs and the tables and used that wall between those two windows as a background. This shot was lit by the overcast sky and my flash and umbrella at camera right. I'm very lucky that my son is willing to cooperate with me on this kind of picture. I hope this lasts, but I'm afraid when he grows up to be a teenager, he won't be so patient with me. Hey, so that's what I got. I hope this was informative or inspiring to you. If your holiday is not over yet, I hope you go out and shoot something now. Uh, anyway, thank you for tuning in. I will talk to you some other time about another topic.